Well, hello there, I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I am the Magic the Gathering content creator equivalent of gonna take some time off, but then wanting to rant about the historic and MTG Arena Economy anyway. Saffron Olive put out a video, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about how he has spent money on the MTG Arena client since Strixhaven came out, how much he has spent, how much he's completed of the set, and his hypothesis, or his conclusion should I say, is that it's one of the most expensive sets to arrive on Arena. No, it's the most expensive set to ever arrive on Arena. He spent $350 at present time, has not completed all the mythics, and also talked about how mystical archives, fucking name, all factors into that too. There'll be a link to the video in the description below, it'll be in the cards as well. I recommend you watch it. It's interesting to hear it from his own personal perspective, but also he tries to engage with the perspective of free-to-play players and sort of what this means for the MTG Arena economy overall. I think he has some good input there. I also want to start this video out by saying mystical archives in paper have been an absolute fucking slam dunk for me. I've enjoyed opening them, I've enjoyed seeing other people enjoy opening them. They are beautiful, the frame treatments are incredible, the art direction is great. For the most part, the cards selected are incredible. The fact that Divine Gambit got into there makes no fucking sense to me, but on the whole, there is some godly stuff in there. I'm very impressed with these overall in paper. But on Arena, they do nothing but compound an issue we've already seen with the economy in the past, and that's what I want to engage with today. For the longest time, Magic the Gathering Online was the only digital client for Magic. It was what I used to play a hell of a lot of my Magic. It helped me to fall even deeper in love with the game. It helped me to practice and get into formats like Modern and Legacy and then play those events at a higher level of skill. I've generally improved thanks to Magic the Gathering Online. It is, in spite of looking like something that Windows 95 might have shat out after an evening of dysentery, it is a good emulation of Magic. It is robust enough to give you the full rule system without roping you whilst you're comboing, although there is a chess clock system, which is arguably better than most systems that Arena and even RL can have, so the chess clock isn't that bad. But more importantly, it emulates the trading and the acquisition of cards that Magic has as well. Magic the Gathering Online is a booster pack based model. You buy boosters just like you would in paper. It is one for one exactly the same, apart from prices vary due to different supply and demand. You can buy tickets for a singular dollar and then you use those tickets to purchase things in the client like packs and pre-constructed decks, or you can buy cards from online vendors like MTGO traders, or you can rent from services like mana traders like I do. You can also sell your stuff for ticks to bots because there's an entire ecosystem built into it via years of being built up by the community. Those tickets can then be sold to the aforementioned things like mana traders and MTGO traders for cash, because then they sell them to other people for cash. There's a whole economy around this. Every ticket is basically $1, and that means you can buy out and buy in to whatever, whenever you want to. You can rent things too. The funny thing is I've bought in and sold out of a Magic the Gathering Online on multiple occasions. When I started to rent a lot, I sold a large portion of my collection and I got hundreds of dollars out of MTGO. Now, the economy isn't always the stablest, especially considering not that many people play on it anymore, and obviously Arena is trying to usurp it and take over from it. But there is no arguing that Magic the Gathering Online presents you with the same options to get into a Magic format or playing Magic as real-world paper Magic does. Magic Arena is not even remotely in the same fucking ballpark for emulating that experience. Now, there are benefits to that, like free-to-play players are going to tell you there are benefits to Arena being, well, able to be played free-to-play, which the other systems, both paper and MTGO, really aren't. But for the most part, I think it's a downside to what Magic has been in the past. You can see that perhaps Magic is changing, transitioning to a more casual model, where we just casually play free-to-play on Arena and play Commander, and that could be the future of Magic, and I'm not making a value judgment on that. But if you want to compete, if you want to play in the competitive formats, if you want to play Standard, which is the primary way to play Arena, well, by Wizards' mandate, why they want Standard to be the primary way to play Arena, then those things are incredibly expensive and have huge barriers that are prohibitive to getting into them. There's also the fact that you can't get out. You cannot sell out of Arena. The money is effectively a sunk cost. I'm not using that truly in the truest sense of the word, I believe, but what I mean by that is you're putting money in and you're never, ever getting it back. So let's talk a moment about the collectability of cards as a tangent that ties into today's conversation. Back in January, Noxious tweeted out a thread including this tweet here. One of the primary reasons people tolerate the stupidity of the TCG distribution model, so you're talking about boosters and randomization, is an implicit secondary market value, which ties to collectability and artificial scarcity. I don't like it, but it's still responsible for the faith that people put into the cardboard. The idea of buying into a collectible trading card game like Magic the Gathering is that you don't completely erode or do away with the investment you're putting in, right? When I and my now wife were poor students, she didn't begrudge me buying booster packs of Magic cards or singles when she saw me flip a Phyrexian Obliterator foil that I opened on eBay, for example, or that I realised some of my old Kamigawa and Mirroring cards were now worth a pretty penny. This investment into cards that are worth money is a cornerstone of Magic's popularity. I agree with Nox there. The reserve list, the secondary market, the lines of vendors at GPs, it's all based on the faith in the game, its collectabilities, and the prices of cards like these. Now, I believe this doesn't have to truly be at odds with the idea of having availability of game pieces. I think that Wizards should try harder to make formats accessible in terms of having the game pieces be cheaper. Collectible elements like your Alpha Birds of Paradise or your Japanese foil mystical Strixhaven archive things can all be well and good, and that's good if those booster products that have the latter of those two in them bring down the prices of your standard rares like your Massacre Worms or your Mayhem Devils or whatever it might be. There is more to Nox's original point. He is talking about the plethora of card styles, frame treatments, and booster fun products that's actually causing this collectability to be diminished to a point where faith in the game as a collectible may actually falter, and thus it's hard to justify buying into the game if that is the case, as it's a very luxurious hobby. So I don't want to take away from the fact that Nox is kind of talking about something a bit different to me, but I thought it kind of rang true here as well, as we look at how Arena isn't about having collectibles, right? It's about having game pieces to play with. The problem we have with the conversation around Arena is that free-to-play players, the people who found it hard to justify really getting into Magic in the first place due to perhaps a low disposable income or where they're at in life, you know, those people are at least playing some form of Magic thanks to Magic Arena, and we need to take a moment to say that is valuable. That is genuinely great. It is great that Arena gives those people an option to free to play. But Arena is an absolute fucking money pit if you want to put money into it to get the cards you want right away, to play the decks you want to play right away. This was meant to be the esports client, for fuck's sake, and the barrier to entry to having access to the playable pieces that you need to compete with different decks each weekend for different events when the metagame shifts. Well, you're looking at $300, $400 per set to complete them. Let's say you don't need to complete them. Let's say you only need 50% or 75%. Well, by Saffron Olive's logic, you need $200 to $300 of money put into Strixhaven alone to get that number of cards. Competitive Magic already has its barriers, the biggest one seemingly being the mismanagement of the system and apathy towards it from Wizards of the Coast, but there are other issues with things like privilege that have come up recently, discussed quite in depth. I've seen it being talked about on Twitter and social media. Are you in a region that has events? Are you in a region that is even supported by Wizards of the Coast and has ample product coming out to you? Would you need to travel pre-pandemic to compete on a world stage? Can you get into testing houses? Can you afford the cards? There are all these things that people don't realise they tie into the systemic power structures of the rest of the world as well. It is very much easier for you to play Magic on a professional level if you come from a good affluent background. And I'm not just talking like upper middle class. I'm talking like if you've got the money and you're a white cis male in America, there are things there that help you out. The lack of rejection from the community, the fact that you can afford the cards, the fact you can travel on your own safely. There are so many things that factor into this that makes the esports difficult in the first place. Add to that the fact that Arena now is more expensive than pretty much any other way that Magic's ever had to compete, and you've got a huge fucking barrier to entry. I'm not sure how popularly talked about this is, so I'm going to teach the viewers of this video to suck eggs here. The pros and competitive players don't tend to have huge collections. Some of them do. Andrea Mangucci often tweets out some lovely Magic pornography of some of the stuff he's picking up. Some people do, right? But the average aspiring pro especially, they would borrow cards. They would loan their cards out to other people. They would do mutual trades to borrow things for events. They would borrow cards from their sponsors. They would rent cards. You didn't have to just like sink money into a system to get cards that you both didn't want and did want to be able to play these decks, because there is that open trade and secondary market element that both MTGO and Magic in paper has that Arena just doesn't. And I want to echo this, and I've said this before, this is all by design. This is not an accident. This is not an accident. This is very much purposeful because it looks to milk the most amount of money out of you as they can. Arena literally says, if you want to compete and you don't have the money to buy a shit ton of packs for every single set, no. Fuck you. And that's kind of shit. And part of me wonders if this is a short-term burn the grass on the field to get to the goal kind of scenario, because of course there is an element of online games and digital games making a shit ton of money off their whales, right? But what is the lasting legacy of those games? We've seen the really big esports, things like League of Legends and Dota. They aren't trying to milk their whales with in-game items that have an effect. They're very much on the cosmetic side of things now. And they've transitioned, right? Don't forget that Riot used to charge you for rune pages in League of Legends, and they moved away from that. They don't really want to lock those pieces behind a paywall if they can. They want to lock the cosmetics behind it, and they make a shit ton of money out of those cosmetics. It's the same conversation we had about collectibles in the physical game. Cosmetics and collectibles, good. Game pieces being expensive, bad. And going back to Nox's point, where there are collectible cards that are worth money, that helps to prop up the game. It may be one of the reasons that Magic has lasted so long. It's not only because it is a fantastic game system, which it is, but people were willing to put up with randomized booster packs and expensive product because they knew they could sit on some staples and sell them down the line or whatever. So if that confidence was knocked and there was no collectability to Magic, which the whole Project Booster Fund thing might drag down a little bit, and Arena definitely shits all over, does that mean people would stop playing Magic? Honestly, I don't think so. I don't really know where I sit on this. It's obvious that it's going to have a detrimental effect, or at least I feel like it's obvious, but I just don't know where it's going from here. It's evident, I guess the only thing I can say that is evident is that things are changing. Magic is changing at an alarming rate. If I look back a year, even 2 years, we're in a very different situation in terms of power level, collectability, booster fun, and where the Arena client is. Things are changing at an alarming rate. And I don't want to be shouting that the sky is falling, because I don't believe it is. But I do think that the way the Arena client is going is detrimental for the game long term. This video has been far more rambling than I expected it to be. I've gone way off notes with this. Beyond the competitive side of things, Historic is an absolute joke to get into. The mystical archives are a slam dunk in paper. As I said at the beginning of this video, they're exciting, they are beautiful, they are driving pack sales, the excitement and the hype, and they're blinging out people's decks. I cannot praise them enough from a paper standpoint. But on Arena, they're either purposely or as a happy accident, a way of hemorrhaging the wildcards of players who want to play Historic. I've talked about this in 2 other videos. I talked about my video where I spent $100 on Arena to see what I would get. That video will be linked in the cards in the description as well. Go check that out. I talked about how Brainstorm and Faithless Looting were commons. They were commons throughout their entire fucking lifetime, except for exclusive exclusive collectible promo versions, which these mythical archives are meant to be. But don't forget, there isn't really any collectability on Arena, honestly. So, in paper, it makes sense that they're rare because it has no negative effect on anything, really. It's about how often they show up in packs, right? On Arena, it determines what wild cards you can use to craft them. If you are on some sort of red-blue Phoenix deck that wants 4 copies of Faithless Looting and 4 copies of Brainstorm, both cards that have been commons at every fucking point in their career within Magic, they're now rares. That's 8 wild cards to get those cards. Bearing in mind, I spent $100 on Arena and I got like 15 wild cards and like 1 of each of the rare archives. Essentially, that $100 would not buy me an entire Historic deck. Let's look at red-green aggro on MTG Goldfish here on Arena. This is not even a 3-color deck, so it means the mana base shouldn't be as expensive. This requires 35 rare wild cards and 6 mythic wild cards. Yeah, those 35 rares, by the way, spread out across 3 or 4 sets. They're they're heavily weighted towards Throne of Eldraine, I think. I'd have to go back and double check. So I think if you are cracking packs for some crazy reason, I think Throne or Strixhaven is the place to be, so you get your mystical archives and all the busted shit from Throne that is still legal and will continue to be legal in Historic. But the point is, you'd spend a ton of fucking money and you wouldn't get all the rares you need and you wouldn't get enough wildcards to complete the deck either. So I'm going to hazard a guess that you need to spend upwards of $200 to build red-green aggro. It might be closer to $300. Bearing in mind that red-green aggro is a list that I pulled of Goldfish, and historical data on Goldfish is not updated to involve the Mystical Archive metagame, so that deck might not even be viable now. So there's that too. As you sink your wildcards into a deck and they ban one card from it, destroying the deck, or the deck just becomes unviable because they're releasing a lot of Mystical Archives into the format, a lot of historical anthologies in the format is changing at an alarming rate as well. You might lose all those wild cards. Not lose, you still have the rares, but they're basically cards that you don't want to fucking play with anymore. There's no way to dust, there is no way to trade, there is no way to explicitly get the cards you want. You just have to simply crack packs until you get the wild cards you need, which is a very expensive method of doing that. In short, if someone were to come into Historic and start playing 1 or 2 decks, it would cost them a bare minimum of around $300 to do so, and that is money they can't get back out. Wizards have been terrible, fucking terrible at supporting older formats in the past. I have talked extensively about the need to reprint fetch lands because they are the cards that make Magic mana bases in Modern so expensive, and to a lesser extent even Legacy. Legacy has the reserve list problem already that we can't really get around because Wizards are never going to fucking do it. I did a video on that as well, I'll put that in the cards. But don't forget also, if you want budget Legacy decks, a lot of them want fucking fetch lands, and these are reprintable cards that they fail to reprint in a meaningful way over and over again. What I am getting at, to summarise all my points, is that Legacy and Modern are difficult to access, although you can access them and sell back out of, so I'd say that makes it arguably cheaper than Historic and Arena in many ways, but they're difficult to access because Wizards have mismanaged the reprinting of staples like fetch lands. Historic is getting to the point now that because of the sheer amount of rare wildcards needed for the average deck, because a lot of the common utilities also put a rare Mystical Archives, it's going to cost you a fucking arm and a leg to get into it, which means people just won't. Either people who are playing Standard and bored of Standard and built up a collection will, new players just can't get into Historic. And some of you might be thinking, that's fine. Some of you might be thinking, who cares? Historic's just for you to play with cards that rotate out of Standard. But there are people out there that don't want to fucking play Standard, because that is also a money sink. You're sinking your money into it for cards to rotate out later that you can't play with. You can't sell out of them, you can't trade them off, you can't dump them into vendors before the format rotates. You're just fucked. The thing I want to add to what Saffron Olive really got at in his video is that he said that Strixhaven is the most expensive set on MTG Arena. But I want to add that it is at this point in time. At this particular point in time. So far, it is the most expensive. And there could be another one around the corner with 1 or 2 more mythics and another load of archives and so on and so on. I'm not saying it's a slippery slope, but I'm saying the precedent is that they will continue to do this unless perhaps we can go fast, but I doubt that will even have that much of an effect, honestly. Don't forget that at one point, they wanted every historic rare, cards that weren't in Standard, to be costing 2 wild cards. Because, again, historically, Wizards of the Coast believe they can't monetize Eternal formats. Although Eternal format players love to buy things like master sets and foils and all that shit, they think they can't monetize them. It's kind of like a catch-22. They think they can't, so they won't. So no one fucking wins. This is, in essence, them getting to go back and monetize Historic harder by ripping all your wildcards from you if you want to play it and forcing you to buy more packs. It's not quite the double rare wildcard fiasco, but it's kind of their version of it. It's fucking frustrating to be somebody who loves Magic and loves eternal, non-rotating formats that you can, step away from a month, come back. The metagame may have adjusted, but at least your deck is still there to some extent. It is frustrating to be one of those players because Wizards really doesn't want to support you unless you're playing Commander. They really don't want to even give those fucking formats a bone. Historic is on a trajectory towards being absolutely inaccessible, barring spending hundreds and eventually even like $1,000 might be needed to get 1 or 2 decks together if we keep going down the fucking route that we're going. And we can change that now, right? Not we, Wizards can. They can make Historic more accessible. They can stop doing this with Mystical Archives, for example. They can do something. Because Legacy and Modern, they aren't dead, but they suffer. They suffer from the neglect of the mothership of Wizards of the Coast. So I am almost imploring them at this point to not let the same thing happen to Historic. How often can you go, oh, here's Pioneer, here's Historic, here's New Age. How often can you create a new format because you fucking let the other ones rot because you weren't willing to, decrease the value of a Scalding Tarn or not rinse us on wildcards? It's just fucking greed. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I have been very ranty today. Strixhaven's great. I actually really like the set. I really like the cards that are in it. It's not overpowered. There's some fun explosive stuff for Commander. Mystical Archives are cool. The set's flavorful, but yeah, this stuff pisses me off. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Have I been too harsh? Have I been too kind? And I'll see you in the next video. Hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Ta-ta for now.